Hal Larson is a superficial man whose fixation on the physical beauty of women gets in the way of seeing their inner beauty. Hal, who lost his father at a young age to disease, turned this way after his father advised baby Hal on his death to never settle for average and always go for hot young tail. Hal has an equally shallow friend, Mauricio, with whom Hal spends his nights obnoxiously hitting on beautiful women at nightclubs. However, the two of them have always been rejected. Hal also has a crush on his hot neighbor, Jill, who he has asked out on several occasions but without success. Jill is not interested as she finds Hal too shallow and is generally not attracted to him. On the work front, Hal is doing okay, but he is dismayed after being passed over for a long-sought promotion. One day, Hal gets trapped with a popular life coach, Tony Robbins, in an elevator. It takes the building management a really long time to get them out, so Tony and Hal get to know each other during that time. Tony learns about Hal's non-existent love life and sympathizes with him. When Tony realizes that Hal's poor luck in dating is because of his shallowness, Tony hypnotizes Hal into only seeing a person's inner beauty. Hal does not realize he's been hypnotized, and Tony's hypnosis works. He starts seeing average-looking women as hot and attractive. Outside his office, Hal encounters a woman who is morbidly obese. However, Hal sees her as the hottest woman ever and offers his cab to her. The lady asks to share the cab, and Hal is instantly smitten. He gets her number and later meets Mauricio for drinks. He tells him about Tony and the magic that made him get a date with women so easily. Mauricio appears jealous and excuses himself to go to the loo. When he returns, he finds Hal dancing with a group of obese and crazy-looking women. Horrified, Mauricio tries to separate his friend from the ladies, but Hal sees them as angels descended from heaven and joins them again on the dance floor. Jill, who is also at the club, is surprised to see Hal dancing with average-looking women. The next day, Hal notices a morbidly obese woman named Rosemary, who he sees as a slender and beautiful trophy blonde. He follows her to a store where he strikes a conversation with her and compliments her beauty. Rosemary, who's used to being overlooked due to her appearance, initially interprets Hal's interest as mockery, but begins to realize his feelings for her are sincere. The two go on a lunch date, and Rosemary reveals that she is currently volunteering for a hospital and also looking to re-up in the Peace Corps. Hal also learns that Rosemary is his boss's boss, Steve Shanahan's daughter. She orders half the things on the menu, which surprises Hal as he is not used to seeing slender women order something other than a veg salad on dates. As they talk, the unthinkable happens and Rosemary's chair caves under her weight. Enraged, Hal yells at the manager for using such low-quality chairs in his restaurant. After their date, Hal asks to meet Rosemary again, which makes her really emotional. The next day, Hal introduces Rosemary to Mauricio. Mauricio is stunned to see his shallow pal dating an obese woman who he calls a rhino. Rosemary also takes Hal to the hospital where she volunteers and introduces him to sick children she looks after. There, he meets a cute little angel girl named Cadence. Hal entertains Cadence and her friends, which makes Rosemary like him even more. She says Hal not being afraid of spending time with the sick children is really good for the children's self-confidence. This again surprises Hal, who sees the kids as adorable little angels. Rosemary walks Hal to his home where she meets Jill. Jill is amused to see Hal with yet another obese woman. After Jill leaves, Hal invites Rosemary into his home, but it makes her uncomfortable as she is not used to being courted by men. She says that she knows she isn't pretty and Hal showering her with compliments makes her look like a fool before leaving. However, the next day, Rosemary shows up at his home and apologizes for her storming out. She calls herself immature for being upset with his compliments. Hal instantly forgives her, and the two continue to date. They go boating, swimming, and to different restaurants. Eventually, Rosemary takes Hal to meet her parents, and Hal unintentionally makes it awkward by trying to compliment her mother by saying that Rosemary gets her figure from her. However, Mr. and Mrs. Shanahan ignore his comment, and the meeting goes well after that. Mr. Shanahan pretends to like him until he gets alone time with Hal, during which he tells Hal to cut the act. Mr. Shanahan says that he knows that Hal is trying to use his obese daughter to get ahead in his career. Hal, however, is stunned by his comments and lectures him about putting cruel and unrealistic standards on his daughter. He reminds him that his daughter has feelings too, and he shouldn't project his insecurities and worldviews on his daughter. He recalls how when he first met Rosemary, she didn't believe that she was pretty, when in reality, she is the most beautiful person inside and out. Later, Hal takes her home. Rosemary is nervous to get naked before a guy, but Hal helps her feel comfortable and the two have a romantic time. Rosemary is the happiest she's ever been in her life and feels that everything is too perfect, which kind of scares her. The next day, Jill notices Rosemary doing the walk of shame out of Hal's apartment. Convinced that Hal has changed his shallow ways, Jill gives him a bottle of wine and some video games that night, but Hal turns her down. The next day, Hal gives a presentation before his seniors at work. Mr. Shanahan is impressed by him and invites him to his cabin. He brings up the conversation from last night. Mr. Shanahan confesses he feels embarrassed for thinking so low of his own daughter, and further adds that she is lucky to have Hal as a boyfriend. Mr. Shanahan also praises his presentation and appoints him to directly work for him. Seeing Hal get serious with Rosemary, Maurizio grows worried and tells Hal that it's about time he raises his standards again. However, Hal can't seem to understand what Maurizio is talking about. In his eyes, Rosemary is the perfect girl, young, slender, and attractive. Hal feels that Maurizio is scared of commitment, that's why he always invents reasons to break up with women he dates. Maurizio dumped his last girlfriend because her toes were odd. Disregarding his friend's advice, Hal continues to date Rosemary and goes on a double date with his friend Walt, who has spina bifida, and his girlfriend Tanya. Rosemary knows about Walt and Tanya, as the former also volunteers at the Children's Hospital while the latter works there. At their weekend getaway, Hal and Rosemary run into her ex-boyfriend Ralph Owens from the Peace Corps. Although Rosemary gets a little awkward, Ralph notes that she looks very happy. Meanwhile, Maurizio remembers Hal talking about his encounter with Tony Robbins and goes to meet him. He asks what did he do to his friend that he suddenly starts finding obese women attractive. After a lot of back and forth, Tony admits to hypnotizing Hal into seeing women's inner beauty. Maurizio lies to Tony that Hal is about to get fired because of his hypnosis, and Tony finally agrees to give him the trigger phrase to break the spell. The phrase is, "Shallow Hal wants a gal." Meanwhile, Rosemary's on a date with Hal at a restaurant. She reveals that Ralph has invited her to join him on a 14-month-long mission in Kiribati for the Peace Corps. The Republic of Kiribati is under an economic meltdown, and more than 100,000 people are in desperate need of medical assistance. Hal gets upset and accuses Rosemary of trying to get back together with pretty boy Ralph. Suddenly, Rosemary's weight claims another victim, and the poor chair breaks down. Hal helps her to get up and goes to have a word with the manager. At the reception, Hal gets a call from Maurizio, who yells the trigger phrase as soon as Hal answers the phone. Hal is naturally puzzled, but before he can ask for any explanation, Maurizio hangs up the call. Hal is returned back to normal, and he starts to see women for who they are. He notices an obese woman wearing Rosemary's dress devouring the meals on his table. But before he could find out what's going on, Maurizio shows up and takes him outside to explain everything to him. Hal initially doesn't believe him, but is soon forced to believe when he runs into Katrina, whom Hal now sees in her true physical unattractive state. He returns home without Rosemary and scolds Maurizio for breaking the spell, saying he was the happiest he's ever been in his life under the spell. He says he doesn't care how the world saw Rosemary. To him, she was young, slender, and beautiful. A remorseful Maurizio suggests he go to Tony again for help, and avoid Rosemary for now because if he saw Rosemary in her real state, even the hypnosis wouldn't be able to help him. Hal heeds Mauricio's advice and avoids Rosemary like the plague. Hal tries to get in touch with Tony, but without success. Several days pass by, and Mr. Shanahan talks to Hal to see if everything's alright between him and his daughter. Hal assures him that everything's fine and he is just a little busy. Later that night, Jill invites him to dinner at a restaurant. Hal is not interested in going out with her, but she keeps on insisting, and Hal eventually gives in. At the dinner, Jill expresses that she has observed him overcoming his shallow nature and is interested in dating him now. However, Hal has realized his true feelings for Rosemary, who coincidentally arrives at the same restaurant with her family. Upon seeing Hal and Jill sitting together, Rosemary assumes the worst and leaves in tears. Hal doesn't recognize Rosemary and walks right by her on his way to a payphone to call her and reassure her of his feelings. When Rosemary receives the call, she is confused and distraught and calls Hal a psycho over the phone and effectively breaks up with him. 5 days pass by. Steve informs Hal that Rosemary's Peace Corps partner Ralph wants to be in a relationship with her again. Hal attempts to find Rosemary, but instead encounters the young patient named Cadence at the hospital. Previously, due to Tony's hypnosis, Hal saw Cadence as a perfect little girl. However, he now sees that there are several burns all over Cadence's face. Inspired by Cadence, Hal changes his views on the physical appearance of people in general. Hal, during his search for Rosemary, learns that Mauricio has his own reason for stopping Hal's hypnosis. It turns out Mauricio has an inoperable vestigial tail, which has prevented him from ever getting close to a woman. Mauricio confesses he was envious of Hal's happiness and is afraid to start a relationship with a woman. Like a good friend, Hal convinces Mauricio to accept his abnormality with confidence and makes up with Mauricio. Determined to reconcile with Rosemary, Hal heads to the Peace Corps recruiting office and confronts Ralph, believing he and Rosemary got back together. Ralph informs Hal that he and Rosemary are not together and that Rosemary's parents are throwing her a farewell party. Hal, Mauricio, and Ralph arrive at the home of Rosemary's parents, and Rosemary initially rebuffs Hal's presence, but eventually accepts his apology when Hal professes his love for her. Rosemary informs Hal that she is still leaving on her Peace Corps mission. Hal says he is coming too, having just been sworn into the Peace Corps by Ralph's friend. Hal and Rosemary reconcile, cheered by the crowd as they kiss. He tries to carry her bridal style to the car but finds he cannot lift her. Moved by his gesture and effort, she triumphantly carries him instead. As the two drive off, Maurizio meets a woman who loves dogs, and the two walk off together as he wags his tail.